Welcome to the third airing of Conversations with Cal, a new series by the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization. We're really excited to have you all here today, and thank you so much for attending. My name is Gabriella, and I'm a small business specialist here in the Ed Ostabu. I just want to make a few comments before I introduce my boss, who will be introducing today's guest. Firstly, you'll notice that if you're not a presenter for this event, both your microphone and camera should be muted and not unmuted unless done so by me. Conversations with Cal will be recorded and uploaded to our website, so if you want to go back and listen to what you heard again or show it to someone else, you'll be able to do that. In the interest of time, we have pre-prepared questions and there won't be a question and answer session. However, we still do want your feedback. So if you have any suggestions about topics you'd like to hear more about, specific questions you'd like answered in a future session by Jeff or by another individual, or another individual you'd like to hear from, as a small business, shoot us an email at small.business@ed.gov. I will put that email address in the chat for future reference, and we will be happy to consider any content suggestions you have for this series. Please do keep in mind that all iterations of the series will be interview-based in nature. You may submit questions through the chat during the event, but we may or may not present them based on timing and flow. Questions not answered today may be answered in a follow-up event. Now that you have a little bit of a better understanding of how this project's going to run, let's begin. I'd like to introduce you to my boss, Calvin Mitchell Jr., or Cal. Take it away, Cal.
Hey, how you doing? Welcome back to Conversations with Cal. I will say, as you're being added, make sure you turn off your video. We just have myself and Jeff here on the screen. If this is your first time with Conversation with Cal, I hope you enjoy it. This is an opportunity for my office to interview a successful small business, to really learn from them and allow you to be more competitive, because what you're going to do is you're going to learn from the small business, and we just have a conversation. I have a way of picking people who I really like, so Jeff made the cut. Jeff is a great guy, great entrepreneur. He has been pretty darn successful in the small business GovCon space. So he's got a lot to say, and I'm really excited about this discussion. I also wanted to say that happy fiscal year end. I know you guys have probably been, if you had the pleasure, feverishly trying to complete those proposals before the end of the fiscal year. I know it's been crazy here all day, just doing data closeouts and doing things here. But hey, this is the best time of the year. So it's our busy time, and it's a great time. I know, and always October 1st, when I was a contracting officer, I always took the day off. Just because I just remember being up until midnight, just plugging away. Now in this role, I don't have to have that so much, so I'm glad that that's the case. But let me introduce this guy on the other side of the screen for me. I want to introduce you to none other than Jeff Nguyen. Outside of just being a pretty cool guy, Jeff is the owner, president, and chief executive officer of Sierra Management and Technologies, a software application development and logistics firm based in Pax River, Maryland. Never sure if you ever been down that way, but it's a beautiful area. It serves defense, federal government, and civilian agencies and commercial clients. So in 2004, Jeff actually became the president and CEO of Blue Beacon Consulting. Now you might say to yourself, hey, hey Calvin, you might be wondering, did you say Sierra Management? Well, Jeff has two companies, right? So in the beginning, he started in 2004, started Blue Beacon Consulting, a small disadvantaged business supporting federal civilian agencies with a focus on business strategies, Elasticsearch, data analysis, analytics, and content management. Key projects include custom software design, big data, software as a service, cloud, and search architecture for the General Service Administration, cybersecurity, custom software development, and program management for the Chief Information Officer of the Small Business Administration, and program management office, the program management office and electronic records for the Department of Education. Custom software and program management is another opportunity that he worked. Federal Communication Commission, and customer analytics and web governance with the Social Security Administration. So you see he has a wide range of experience from different agencies. Jeff participated in Vistage, a CEO mentoring and peer advisory group for 10 years. So you see he's got a heart for giving back. He subsequently co-founded a CEO mentoring group, think tank, that has been running since 2016. So Jeff is one who is not only running around with the catcher's mitt, he's throwing it back, right? He's giving back to those. And Jeff has a bachelor's degree of science and business management with a minor in computer science from the Scarlet Knights, Rutgers University. We can talk offline about those great sandwiches that you can get there in New Brunswick. And Jeff also is a graduate of Gonzaga High School, which when he was there, he played football for the team. So without further ado, Jeff, did you want to say hello to the team?
Welcome, everyone. I look forward to offering whatever little bit of advice that I can give or some shared experiences that I hope many of you or some of you will find useful. So I'm at your disposal in terms of my questions and answers with Cal.
For those who are coming in late, just so you know, Conversations with Cal is really trying to add a different dimension to what the OZABU can provide. A lot of times I get questions about starting businesses, and that's just experience that I don't have. And so what we designed this to do is to provide you with some insight for some who are experienced in the contracting field, and really provide you with some real honest questions. So when I interview each of potential guests, I say, hey, how honest do you mind being? Right? Because we really need honest answers, because people are really trying to grow businesses and are really trying to figure out how to do that. And so we always get the gentleman's agreement that we can have the ability to be open and honest and have real conversations, because those real conversations are what's going to help you to be successful, and it's going to really help you to push the needle. So Jeff, first again, thank you. And Jeff is well renowned in the area. But Jeff, what a lot of people may not know is why you started your business in 2004. What made you step out and start your business? If I remember correctly, you had a really rock star job. And can you talk to us about how you started and what really got you moving in this direction of entrepreneurship?
Sure, Calvin. For me, I spent my first maybe 10 years out of college in various corporate jobs, just moving up the corporate ladder, getting various levels of experience in management, accounting, finance, and just general business stuff, right? And then I got my first taste in the professional consulting when I moved over to Accenture and KPMG Consulting. In those two businesses, I really got a chance to really appreciate what the business of professional services, utilization, staffing, how do you commoditize and productize your messaging to make sure it's clear and crisp. If you're doing something to create a profit, but also more importantly, what is the value to your customer? What is the why? Don't just do something for a reason. How do you differentiate yourself or your messaging, right, to your client versus the competition when the competition is very fierce? in those two arenas, KPMG Consulting and Accenture, you know, they have very large bill rates. They're selling a brand, they're selling intellectual property, they're selling teams outside of what I can present in that meeting. When I became a small business, I had to present myself. I had to present the teams I could bring together. I had to bring value day one. I didn't have the luxury of failing, right? You know, as the old adage goes, not many people are going to fail by hiring IBM. But I had to compete with the IBMs of the world, the Accentures of the world, the KPMG Bearing Points of the world by bringing value instantaneously by the people I brought together and by my commitment as a CEO coming into my clients. So the why, you ask, is a great question. For me, quite honestly, selfishly, I got tired of people telling me what to do with my career. I got tired of making partners money and working on contracts or things where I did a lot of traveling. As I started to build my family and so forth, being my own entrepreneur meant two things. I could hire the people I wanted to work with. I could decide based on my values what I wanted to do and present myself out there to the marketplace, who I wanted to be. I wanted to go after the customers I wanted to do. I wanted to go after the jobs I wanted to. And I had to balance that off with being profitable. You know, you can go out and do a lot of things, but if the market says there's no interest, there's no value, I'm not getting paid. So finding out that sweet spot for the things that I thought were uniquely mine, that I could bring to the table, and then show the value to the clients to make a living off of it was kind of like an intellectual challenge to me. And then I thought I was ready because of all my years of experience, again, both professional services and consulting in corporate America. I thought it was a great time for me to go off and launch my own stuff. But I did that in a measured way, right? I didn't just go off. You know, I was a little older when I started my company, my first company. I didn't start it from my father's basement or a garage, right? I basically had bought a house, moved back down to the DC area from traveling a little bit, had 3 kids in private school, was trying to make it on my own. And so I had a legitimate lifestyle that was just not my own. It was my kids, it was my family that I had to provide for. So when I left, I actually had conversations with some of my clients and said, hey, because I was working in consulting at the time, I'm about to leave. You know who I am. You've seen my work product. You've seen how I conduct myself professionally. Will you go with me? Out of my top 10 clients I spoke with, 5 said, Jeff, you go somewhere, I'm going to go. I'm happy to work with you. Out of those 5 clients, Calvin, 1 went with me.
Wow.
And that 1 went with me, and God bless her. She gave me some work. Again, I don't ask for handouts. All I ask is that judge me by the proposal I put together, the pricing I give you, and the people I bring, the resumes I bring to bear at that moment in time, and then give me a chance. And so out of that 1, we took off and then built a company around it.
So hold on, Jeff. So you were in New Jersey at the time, right? When you graduated Rutgers, and then you stayed there, right? And in New Jersey, quite like I did, right? So you enjoyed a lot of good bagels and Taylor ham, right? And the good pizza.
Yes, sir.
And then you decided to give it all up to move to the DC area, right? I'm assuming you wanted to be closer to home.
Yep.
Now, how is that selling your dream to your family, right? Because I'm sure your mom and your wife and your kids had some convincing to do there. What happened there?
One of the things that, Calvin, I think that all of us as small business don't really appreciate is that our businesses are a mirror image of us. We are the chief everything officer, CEO, and our health, our personal lives all matter in terms of how we run our business. If I'm sick, guess what? That company's not running until I get better. I can't offshoot that, right? So you make great points. I was in New Jersey. I wanted to get back home. I think being in Washington, D.C. is a tremendous place of people of color. It's a tremendous place for diversity. Those that are non-diverse individuals have a better respect, a deeper respect, I think, across the board for people of color. Back when I grew up, right, you had people of color in the mayor's office in Washington, D.C., and other places like that, places of power, the head and the chief of the police. So I wanted to come back to D.C. and build my family. You're right. I was running up the corporate ladder as fast as possible. I was working tons of hours, having great contracts, great projects, and so forth. And I remember telling my mom and dad, when my mom and dad, who both were federal government workers, my father worked for the old Office of Civil Service Commission, which is old now OPM, and my mom, Department of Labor. When I told my parents, who worked in the federal government, because in the Kennedy administration, that was the only place for black folks to feel safe and secure. And they said, okay, you're going to go to government. That's great. But you're leaving your company. You're leaving your jobs. Oh, my God. And my mom said, sweetie, you're going in a place that I can't help you if you fail.
Wow.
And I still get choked up about that because my parents always pushed me. They wanted me to succeed. They didn't want me to be held back as a person of color, but they knew the challenges a person of color would have in terms of always being behind the eight ball or not having things, go your way or even having access. We always lose access. And that's one of the reasons why I was very proud and humbled when you invited me part of this, because I want to help people understand how to get access.
Right. Wow. And so it sounded like there was a leap of faith, right? Not only from you, but from your family, right? To go to a new place and really do something different. So how did you specifically decide the federal government, and how did you specifically start in IT, right? What made you get that start?
Sure. No, and you're right. It was a leap of faith, but for me, at the end of the day, I started with things that I knew that if I got in a jam, I could roll my sleeves up and do. The work I first sold, the projects I first won, I'm like, even if it's just me working like a 10-man team, 50 hours a day if I had to, I would get this work done. So I would just go on what I call a death march. I would soldier through whatever I needed to do to get that. Now, unfortunately, or fortunately, I didn't have to worry about that. I had great people around me, and we made it all on deliverables, and we focused on delivering high quality in goals, right? Excuse me. But, going into IT, I'm really solving business problems. IT, technology, is just an enabler of that. When I was at Accenture, when I was at Bearing Point, if I talk to a client, how do you want to get up the ladder? If you are number 10 in your industry sector, how do you want to get to number 5? If you're number 5, how do you want to get to number 3? What's number 1 doing? What are you doing better? What are things organically or organizationally that you aren't doing to get yourself to the next level? Usually technology is a massive driver. It's an accelerator to enable those business desires, dreams, outcomes, objectives, and so forth to get there. So for me, I solve business problems by the use of technology. I'm not a coder. I solve business problems because that's the value. Because if you solve problems for your client today, you are going to live or outlive the use of an outdated technology over time. You'll be there because then you'll be a partner for them in whatever challenge they have in their field.
I like that. You'll outrun obsolescence, right? I like that idea. Like
exactly.
You're not tethered to a technology, right? You're really, because they're looking for the solutions that you bring. I love that.
Right now, Calvin. Again, there might be a lot of my colleagues out on this line here. It's okay to be tethered to a technology, business analytics, cloud computer, cyber, as some of the sexier things. But you always have to be leading edge and thinking ahead and using that technology in that space, those broad spectrums of cyber, business analytics, and so forth, to solve not just today's problems, but think ahead till tomorrow's problems. So it's okay to be tethered, but don't be isolated as if that's the only box of which you operate in.
Wow, that's good. Good advice. Good advice. So I'm really excited. I want to go back a little bit. 2004. We know what the market looked like. We know there was a lot of things happening, right? The economy was changing quite a bit. You decide to start a business. My mom kind of gave you the hesitancy, right? Because old school, right? Hey, we work in a job and you work it forever. They couldn't imagine how you would give up everything to start something new.
Right.
You stepped out and you said, hey, I got 5 clients, and they all gave me the great, hey, I'm going to support you, and only 1 client gave you that support. Tell me how you felt in that time.
It was very interesting. When I left and had all 5 clients tell me, because I had done really good work with them over the past year, I felt good. I'm like, okay, I can do this with 5. When only 1 left and came with me, I was really worried about how am I going to provide for my family? How am I going to feed my family? How am I going to survive on only 1 client? Also, I didn't have any status. I wasn't an 8A at the time. And so how do I get my client to then get to me? Once I had my client, how do I understand and navigate the contractual side, the acquisition side, to win my first contract? So I called maybe 20 CEOs of very small companies where I thought my little $500,000 contract would be big enough that they would take my call, but not so big that they wanted to take it and run for me and try to steal my relationship. Enough, they helped me get my first contract.
Yeah, tell me a little bit more about that.
But it's interesting, Calvin. And one of the things I'll pass on to all the people that will listen, it's so easy as a CEO to what I call outsource your relationships. It's easy to let your sales guy or your business development guy keep talking to your customers and your clients. It's easy for your account managers to be intimate and go out to drinks or go out to dinner with your clients or whatever. It's easy as a CEO to sit back and say, I'll focus on this squeaky wheel. I'll be the oil. I'll focus on fighting these fires. But when you outsource your relationships, your clients are building deeper relationships with someone else. And you can't be surprised if your sales guy starts and takes another job and takes that client with you. You can't be surprised if your account manager goes somewhere else and takes your client with you. You got to keep those relationships. So for me, all I had, and this is where I started my company with Blue Beacon in 2004, and this is how I transitioned from my other company that I was working for, by owning those 5 relationships. Only one came with me because I didn't outsource it. So then when I went to a person to say, hey, I looked you up, you have an 8A contract, I need an 8A sole source to get this $500,000 job. They said, sure, Jeff, I'll help you. We worked out very good, strong contractual language, team agreements between both of us. I felt very well protected, and I set it up where I got paid regardless if I did any work. Now, I want to do the work, but I needed to make sure that I would get my cut of the money. If they took all the work and ran away from me, that I still had money coming from them. So that was just kind of my way of being cautious. We finished the work 3 weeks before the contract was about to end. That guy and his company tried to go around me and try to steal my relationship. Now think about that for a second, Calvin. I'm strong enough to bring a relationship to you that I have such great customer awareness and great reputation that this customer is willing to give me a sole source contract without me even being a status 8A company or HubZone, whatever. And this company, rather than say, let me work with you, Jeff, you must have something good here, they try to go behind my back and steal my relationship. Long story short, the client came to me and said, Jeff, I don't know what's going on, but this is what's happening. So I told that guy, hey, you know what? I'm not going to get in a fight. They're a bigger company. I said, hey, we lost the work. We lost the follow-on. We're not going to do it. And I took that work to a separate relationship. Again, keep the relationships yourself. Keep them close to yourself. It's so easy to get lazy out there, but you can't trust people. You got to trust but verify. Have strong contracts, right? Henry Kissinger, right? Strong contracts, strong team agreements. If you're the CEO, there's nothing wrong with you reading proposals and understanding pricing and the terms of agreement, because at the end of the day, that's your name going on that, no matter whether you're protected by a corporate veil of an S corporation or C corporation. My name is going on every proposal, every contract that I sign, and it's okay for you to be a CEO, even if you have some smart, depending on the size you are. I was just starting off then. As I've gotten bigger and bigger, I have to trust my people, but I also get involved with the biggest deals, and I have strategic planning meetings. Okay, we're about to enter in a contract with Booz Allen or Leidos or SAIC. Here's the things I can live with. Here's the things I need to be fighting for, and here's the things that are must-haves. Now go work on the tactical details to make that happen. But you got to stay involved in those aspects of the business.
So the first deal that you had with the federal government, you essentially cultivated through a relationship.
Oh, absolutely. Again, you know, in government sales, Calvin, you know, winning 25% of your work is considered Cooperstown, right? 25% might be, you know, Baseball Hall of Fame. To me, that's 75% losses, right? To me, I'm a small business. I don't have time or the resources or the money to hire a separate proposal writing staff. So I have to pull my billable people offline. So my billable people are working 40, 50 hours a week for a client. And these people, although they might be 1099s or W-2s, they could have been with me 1, 2, 5 years. They don't have the corporate loyalty to the company that I do. It's my company. So I can't keep asking my billable people to do spectacular work with my clients, come back and spend 30 or 40 hours a month to give me 10 proposals in the course of a year when 7 of them will fail. So I have to focus on those high quality touch points where I have customer intelligence, customer familiarity, understand pricing, budgeting, and be able to cultivate those relationships because I'm trying to transcend value. When I put a proposal out there, I'm no longer talking on the phone to the customer. I'm no longer meeting face to face. My value has to be encapsulated and communicated and articulated in a standalone document called a proposal that then wins me work.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about, let's back up a little bit. So what was that contract, your first contract on GSA schedule? Was it an 8A? What was it? What was that first contract?
Calvin, I tell you, I was green, man. I was coming in from the federal sector, the commercial sector with all the other companies I'd worked for. I had a relationship. I had worked with an 8A before that. And so I knew something about federal contracting relationships, but I had no corporate status myself. And understand the big transition for me coming from commercial to the commercial sector to the federal sector was when you're talking about federal tax dollars, it's only the corporate officer, the contracting officers that's warranted to spend taxpayer money. And so for me, building relationships with the program manager, the guy that has the problems, that's easy. We're talking tech talk. I'm solving his problems. I understand that. But then I got to convince the contracting officer or the contracting specialist why they need me versus anyone else. So you have to have a dual conversation and be able to wear both hats and communicate that there's value to the government. So to your point, reaching out, and I did not have any status, but that taught me the importance of going out and got my 8A. So started my company October 2004, February 2006, I went and got my 8A through the SBA and then successfully graduated after 9 years in 2015.
So you got the first deal through relationships. I think that's fantastic. I think my team preaches that all the time. We talk about that. But again, it's one thing saying, hey, relationships are everything. It's one thing seeing somebody who's actually done it, right? You kind of added some legitimacy to my team here. I appreciate that. What I think is really fascinating is that you quickly got in, right, and kind of got your wheels moving, and you gave some really good advice about teaming and not being afraid to kind of figure out, right, that because I'm sure in that first contract you kind of figured out the rules and the regulations, and how different the federal government is from the commercial side, and then you moved into the 8A. Now the 8A it takes time and it takes some effort, but tell us a little bit about that experience.
Calvin, so the 8A is a license to hunt. And, let me just back up 1 second, and I hope I don't get too choked up about it only because, I'm a mama's boy at heart. I was born and raised in Washington, D.C., like I said. And, so 2006, I'm creating my company. I'm a year or two in. I've won a couple contracts, these single contracts, make enough money to provide for some subcontractors and start building my company. But I kept it lean. I could have got an office. I didn't worry about that. If it didn't contribute to building revenue or it didn't contribute to adding value to my clients, I put it in the bank for a rainy day because you never know what you're going to have. Right. So to your point, I became a 8A company, and that gave me a license to hunt. And that's all it did. So I had a relationship, and all that meant was that people were able to now get to me directly. I didn't have to reach out to a third-party company I didn't know that had a Schedule 70, that had a MOBIS schedule at the time, was a hub zone, anything like that. I was an 8A where people can get to me, and that's where I sold my value. So I spent the next couple of years building my company. And again, I think it's critical for all of us to take appreciation, have work-life balance as CEOs. Again, when I am offline, my company is offline. So 2006 to 2008, I'm building my company. I went through a divorce. I'm learning how to braid my daughter's hair before going to school as a single dad. And they're like, Dad, that's not how mom does it. And I'm like, sorry, can we put a hat on it, right? I was like, sorry.
That's what I do, Jeff.
Right.
I cannot catch the hair. My daughter's hair is like super soft.
Yeah.
I can't do it. So I'm good at a ponytail with the scrunchie. I'm proficient with that. Otherwise, baby girl, just put on a hat and we're gonna go.
Right. Well, Calvin, I'm very good at braiding hair when it's wet, but in the middle of December and January, that's no good, right? So I learned that. But and then on a more kind of somber note, my mom was diagnosed with cancer, and so in the 2007-2009 timeframe, for those 2 years, Calvin, I literally wrote proposals at the foot of my mother's bed and she was a clinical trial in Johns Hopkins because I could not look at my children and my mother, as sick as she was, knowing the sacrifices that folks of color make to get ahead and have the next generation ahead. If I told my mom, I'm going to stay here at your foot of your bed and my company's going to go under, she might have gotten out of that bed and hit me with her slipper if she wanted to, because she would not accept that. So being a CEO is about understanding that we have our own health, but who we are in our business is who we are personally, and we have to balance all that. And so for me, the 8A provided that license to hunt, and it expedited and accelerated the procurement process so that if I want to contract relationships, we could start work within 30 or 45 days. We didn't have to wait 6 months on a proposal. And obviously, my chances with sole source meant that I didn't have to worry about that 70% of losing government cycles, right? Fast forward in 2009, 2010, one of the smartest things I did, one of the hardest things I did, my contract, if you want to say, that made me who I am today was the buying help, getting a proposal help to help write the STARS 2 first base year contract. So my company won STARS 2 base year, and then we did a lot of work, put $20, $30, $40 million on the STARS 2 contract, then got the STARS 2 first option year, which just expired this August. So going from an 8A, going to STARS 2, all because those are accelerated government acquisition vehicles that didn't do anything except give me a vehicle once I built my relationships with the clients. That helped me understand the contracting process and work with other teams and have other kind of institutional organizational value so that I actually had Accenture and a couple other large companies come to me and say, hey, Jeff, we'll be your 50, 49%. We want to get in front of a client. We have a relationship, but we want to be first boots on the ground. And I'm like, I can make that happen.
Wow. Jeff, I just got to say, so often, you talk about your mother, and at the foot of the bed is her legacy, right? Yeah. And so often we don't realize how much we probably impact because you probably encouraged her, right? You being by her side, you continuing to do what you loved, probably gave her all the inspiration that she could probably take, And a lot of times we may not realize how inspirational we really are in our families, right? You mentioned your daughter and braiding the hair, and I remember even this is before COVID, leaving the house, and I always tie my tie up and put it down, and my son had it around his head, right? He couldn't figure out how to get it on, but it's amazing how much you have a focus on your family as you're building this business. I really like the idea of thinking about how you're growing your business, right? Because most people think, hey, if I got a business, I got to have an office, I got to have this, I got to have that. But it really seemed like the way you scaled up was pretty conservative and calculated at the same time. I know this isn't a question, but can you talk about how to scale? And because you went from hey, I'm the new kid at school to senior high school pretty quick, right? By getting on one of those government-wide contracts. Right. Can you kind of walk us through that a little bit?
Sure. So Calvin, again, for me, don't be afraid to hire 1099s. Don't be afraid to outsource anything. As you mentioned earlier, I've been part of Vistage as a CEO group. I've also had my own CEO think tank group where I mentor a lot of small businesses. And the challenge that small businesses have, we have a saying in that world, which is, if you're a CEO, if you're working in the business, you're not working on the business, right? Wow. I can find lots of ways where I could bill myself tomorrow. I could send myself out and I can make money for the company tomorrow, but I'm just another resource then. I cannot find another CEO that's going to run the company the way I want, in the vision and the direction and the mannerisms that I want. I can't outsource being a CEO. If I want to go work for someone else, I can find plenty of people put my resume on the street. But if you're a CEO, if you're so busy being billable, you're focused on your client's work, 30%, 50% of the time, that's 50% of the time that I guarantee you I'm not doing that. Your competition's not doing that. You're telling me as a CEO that your company is so important to you that you can only work on a company 50% of the time? Your other part of your customers are busting their hump, giving 120% of the time. So if you're working inside your business, you're not working on your business. And to your point, hiring good accountants, hiring good lawyers to make sure you have just templates. You don't need to hire them all the time, have them all the time, don't pay the fees. But you don't need to have this big staff of overhead. Again, for me, if it's not driving revenue, it's protecting revenue or protecting my organizational brand. And then they're gone. 2 or 3 weeks, hourly rate, negotiate some stuff, negotiate fixed fee, tell them I'm small, performance-based contracts, whatever you want to do, and then get in and get out. If you want to hire a sharp person, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. There's times, Calvin, where I had a person that was billing $190 an hour, and I was only getting $10 an hour. That was less than 10% on a $200 an hour bill rate, because the client gave me this, and the client told me, Jeff, I need you to hire this guy. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm not gonna make any money on this. I can't even pay for the taxes on this guy. But the client told me, so the client, again, to me, Nordstrom's with respect, right? The client's always right. But there's some other extenuating circumstances. But when the client told me that, I hired that person because that person brought to the project a level of gravitas, a level of importance and subject matter expertise that he normally would not, I as a small business normally would not have access to. Right. But he was trying to go off and make money for his family. I think they were looking to do some type of in vitro and some other adoption or something like that. So they wanted to have cash. He didn't want to worry about going up a corporate ladder. So it worked well. With that one hire, I built a team of 22 people around him because he created a sense of urgency in the trenches that the government person then relied on and said, oh, wait a second. He sees something where we should go. He's down in the trenches. He knows my business. He's trying to problem solve. He's trying to help. And Jeff is accelerating, right? There's that word again. Jeff's accelerating how to get me to my next level. And again, so for that, trying to understand being conservative. You don't need to have an office if you don't need to have it. Have enough contract templates, but you don't need to have a lawyer full time. You don't do some things yourself and so forth. But just keep it small, focus on whatever drives revenue, and don't be afraid to build relationships, even if they're temporary. Again, 1099 said, Jeff, I can commit 6 months. Give me 6 months and let me see what I can do with it. If you are adding the value to that person as you add with the client, that person, I guarantee, is going to give you another 6 months or another year, depending on their circumstances.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. So now we started just kind of getting in there, right? And then we built this relationship. Couple years later, we decided to get onto the 8A, get into the 8A program. So we got 9 years of that, and then the 8A stars. So some of the contracts that you've bid. How long does it take to become successful? How many bids did you submit before something broke free, or how did that work?
So Calvin, interesting. So go back to my 5 clients that I said if I'm leaving. One came to the first year. 3 years later, I have my stars too and stuff like that. I went to the other 4 clients. I said, it's been 3 years. If you don't give me work, you might as well give it to the next guy because I'm going under. I've been getting killed with the divorce. My summer school kids, my kids were in private school, and I was struggling to maintain that. I told you I just bought a house. My parents, I didn't want to go bother my mom and dad. My mom was really sick at the time and wound up passing away in September 2010, and my father soon thereafter, right? And so for me, I went to my clients and said, you were going to give me work. I'm still the same guy. Here's how my company's grown. Here's what we've done. I'm not asking for a handout. Give me something, proof of concept, a pilot. Give me something to start just to prove my worth. Judge me by the teams I bring together and by the pricing and the proposal I put together and the subject matter expertise I bring to bear. Don't give me a handout. Let me earn my way. 2 people out of those 4 gave me work. So that was
Wow.
3 people out of 5. Those 2 people were SES level folks by the time I got to them again, and they propelled my career. They ultimately gave me tens of millions of dollars worth of contracts, but I busted my hump every time. And again, there are times they called me and say, Jeff, this guy's not working out or this guy's not delivering. I say, you tell you what, take his time off the timesheet. Oh, no, we'll pay him. I said, no, take his time off the timesheet. I'll eat that cost. I'll pay that guy. He's gone. What do you need? Because it's about me delivering value, not just meeting their expertise, their experience, but exceeding their level of understanding of value, right? And so for me, being part of Stars 2 was just an accelerator to get there. But for me, I go to my clients and say, look, it's the Accenture way. Again, I lean on that a lot. Don't give me one part of the project. Mr. Client, if you have a $1 million contract, okay, fine, I'll take that, sure. But if you have a $10 million problem to solve, if you have a $7 million problem to solve, give me that. Let me own the relationship. Let me be the single belly button you can push, and let me bring other people on the board. Now I can control them. I could be your leverage. I could be your leverage with these other clients, and let me own your entire problem. The benefit for me as a small business, I get that full $10 million as a revenue stream, right? So if it's a small 8A set aside, 8A company, I own 51%, $10 million, I get $5,100,000. Some other couple companies get $4,900,000, but I'm delivering $10 million worth of value, $10 million worth of past performance and capabilities that now I'm learning and ingraining in my own company on the backs of subcontractors.
So Jeff, you were at a point where you were really in a tough spot, right? You were going through a divorce. I appreciate you being honest and sharing. And then, your parents, who I know you were deeply close to, was there any time where you said, you know what, maybe this is too much? How did you get through? How were you able to do? How were you able to just move on? Like, what was the determination? What was the fire that made you just to keep pushing in? Was it, hey, I'm already invested, or was it something else?
Calvin, I guess that's a good question, but I don't think my story or my motivation is any different than half a dozen of the other colleagues that are out here on the thing. Whether you're an immigrant, whether you're first generation new to America or second generation, we all want a taste of the American dream, right? And we all want to know what it's like to be part of the accepted class, if you will, right? And so for me, my parents were always, my dad got pistol whipped by a state trooper in Alabama for standing in line in a movie theater.
Wow.
My mom, God love her, her father was just old school sexist. My mom was brilliant, wanted to go to college, so forth. But my grandfather was like, Shirley, you don't need to do that. You're a woman. You'll get married, so forth, and kind of kept her down. And she tried to fight, and so, but those were the signs of the time. So my parents instilled in me, you go where you can want to go. You go where you fight and earn to want to go. There's no reason that you can't make the American dream better. And like any parents of color, they wanted me to have something better than what they have.
Yeah.
And conversely, I want more for my children than I have. And so there have been times, Calvin, there are times I have written proposals. There's times I rented a cabana down at Ocean City so that I didn't have wind blowing around me, and I could be on conference calls, and I could have my computer, and I'm doing proposals 20 feet from the beach because my children are 8 or 9 years old playing in the water, because I didn't want them to not have the life that I wanted them to have. And I didn't want them to be cooped up in a hotel room while I'm doing proposal after proposal, or marketing collateral, or white paper after white paper to get my value across. So there's no money. There's no promise of money out there in white papers or marketing collateral, but I'm getting my name out there. I'm getting my value out there. And so for me to be able to, do work and let my kids, A, see that I'm working and busting my hump, but B, I'm still there for them and giving them their life. That's the kind of times I wanted to quit. I just dug deep and found, I said, if I quit, what am I going to do? If I quit, how am I going to make my family better? If I quit, have I done my parents' legacy a disservice? And that's what propelled me.
Yeah, I love that. In the last discussion, we talked about, how how family sometimes is a good motivator for us to keep going. And I just wanted to touch on that because I know it's special. I know a lot of people, their families are special to them, whether it's a mom or dad, aunt, uncle, aunt, whoever that might be, and just that motivation to go. Going back to the 8A, so you get your 8A, and it seems like to me, I really love your story because your story is all relationship based, right?
Right.
You really leverage your relationships and own the relationships, and that's how you really grew your company. Can you talk a little bit about so you have your 8A, now what?
Well, so here's the thing, right? I hired some very smart people, and I hired some guys. When the problem is you hire smart people, what do? They think they're smarter than everyone in the room, which is fine, right? Just because you're smart, and everybody who's a CEO on this call today probably can echo what I'm saying. Just because you're smart doesn't mean that you want to step in the ring, both feet on the diving board, and say, I'm the one to take the control and the commitment. I'm the one that's going to take this on. I'm going to take on whether I'm making payroll this week or month or not. I'm the one that's going to take on right in front of a client when the client's reaming out my account manager, and I have to be the one that says, this is my company. I own it. I'll make it right. Right. So to your point, having smart people, being smart doesn't mean you want to run a company. It doesn't mean you understand the building, the mentoring, the retaining, the hiring, the firing, the growing of personnel. I don't sell candy. I don't sell computers. I don't sell buildings. I sell value demonstrated by people. So I have to be a people person first. And again, I've seen lots of people, companies and CEOs I mentor say, why are you treating your people bad? You know, if you had a leak in your foundation of your house, you jump on that in a minute. If your car was running out of gas or had flat tires, you'd fix that in a minute. Your people are no less important to your success as a professional services consultant company than what we just described. Take care of your people. Don't be cheap with them. You know, if you need to be a big brother and listen, you know, have what I use the term business empathy. Don't just tell people what they want to do. Don't just assume, just listen. You know, in the sales cycle, people forget the most important tool we have is our ears. People will tell you so many things about what they want if you just listen. I can't tell you how many salespeople or CEOs go in 30 minutes into a conversation, they've talked for 20 of those minutes. What have you learned? Now, what is the client might learn something, but what have you learned about the client? How can you be responsive? How do you understand their value? If you're talking about relationships, you have to listen, right? So again, I've had a lot of very, very sharp, I've had guys that have made billions. Hear me, Calvin. I've had guys that made billions of dollars being architects, senior developers at Google, Facebook, and Twitter. And they've left me because their stock matured. Okay, I can't complain. I wish they remembered me and gave me a little bit of money, but that didn't work. Okay, fine, right? I'm not bitter. Don't mean to be bitter anyway. But the point is that I surround myself with sharp people. As a CEO, if I'm the smartest guy in the room, I'm hiring the wrong people. As a CEO of the company, if I'm the one and everyone's saying yes, one of us across the table is not needed, and I guarantee you I'm not going. So, right? So I want to make sure that I have the smartest people, not for me from an ego perspective, but to make sure that clients have the best. And just because, again, you're smart doesn't mean you want to run a company. And so for me, running a company was a thing I did relative to the 8A and the SBA and the STARS too and stuff like that.
So how many agencies have you worked with, and how are they different?
You know, it's interesting. So I've worked Department of Ed, Social Security Administration, Department of Interior, USGA, USDA, FCC, SBA, GSA. I've worked with all of them. And here's the thing, you know, my parents worked for the government. I didn't work for the government until I was in my 40s. And one of the things that blew me away, Calvin, was the reputation that federal government workers have is so wrong. It's so unfair. You know, you get politicians on both sides saying federal workers are lazy, whatever. When I came to the federal government, I was working at FirstGov at GSA and doing things. No, IBM would not come to me and tell me, Jeff, I have a problem where I need to have 10 million concurrent users on a website. ExxonMobil wouldn't do that. Xerox wouldn't do that. Who can do that? The federal government. The federal government has the scale and size and complexity of problems that, as an IT technician like myself, would love to chew on. And so for me, there's a lot of smart people in the federal government space, and they all have problems on how to provide better, faster, more accurate information to the constituents. So for me, that's my common thread. Whether it's unstructured data, whether it's structured data, whether it's staying in my lane around the data and being able to efficiently have that agency communicate through various means, user portals, networks, cyber, whatever, to their constituents, they all have the same problem. But what I did better than most was understand not just that technology layer, not just that presentation layer that the customers see in the customer portal, but the why, what I call the business empathy of not just what's my motivation of the clients, but the why. Why does that agency want us to give that information out in a timely fashion and so forth, so that, I understood the technology application to solving that business problem for my agency. So each agency had a different priority, but they all had the same type of mix or desire to be the best provider of that information to their customer base, the American people.
And so I want one more question for you, and I tell you, this has been a great discussion, Jeff. It's really been, you dropped some gems. I'm over here writing it down. License to hunt, business apathy. I'm eating it up. So here's the question. So the federal government is huge, right? How do you decide what's going to be your focus? How do you decide what is it? Is it by the technology they're using? Is it by maybe some other thing? How do you really decide who you're going to work with and to really market yourself to that agency?
Well, selfishly, I would tell all of the people on the phone here to not work the Department of Ed. Because, right, and here's the reason why, Calvin, because you guys are the gold standard. You guys, I've worked at FSA, Department of Ed, you guys stand behind what you do. I love you guys because of what we're doing here today in the outreach. So the question is, for me, out of all the agencies, I suggest that everyone on this phone, you go through the mechanics. You got to get the basic blocking technique. Understand the forecast. Go to the federal, the Congressional Budget Office. Understand what are the spending priorities for certain agencies. Understand how those agencies' spending habits and use of technology matches up with your corporate capabilities. Then understand where you have relationships. I don't care if it's a person you met at church. If you have any type of personal relationships in some of those agencies, use those to get into the agencies. But now you're speaking from a position of credibility. If I can find a way to talk to a Calvin Mitchell, and then I say, hey, I've seen through your federal budget process and your forecast the following things. Let me tell you what we can do to solve that. And here's a free white paper that talks about some of your business challenges, problems, and so forth, which shows I've done my homework to understand what your needs are. And I'm offering you free solutions, just something to think on, so that maybe it gives you a different way of thinking about things. Or you say, hey, this guy's pretty good. Then what I can do is maybe call you back in for another meeting. You got to work those meetings organically. But you pick relationships first in those agencies that I go the other way, right? Here's my little secret, Jim. Some people say, I'm going to go to XYZ agency because they're far below their SBA quotas. They're not doing a good job on 8A, HUBZone, woman-owned. They're not doing it because they don't value it. It's not a reporting problem. They have enough activity and chances to get those people in. They choose not to. I would come to a Department of Ed, which goes back to my other thing. I'd go back to you, Calvin. I'd go back to FSA and say, let me go to agencies that show by their actions that they value the small business community and are scoring high marks there. Now I know that they're hungry. I just got to find the right food to put on their table. I can't provide the right food on the table for someone that's not eating, that's not hungry. I'm not that charismatic. I'm not going to change their mind. But if they have a need, a business need, a technology need, I can help solve that problem. And they just need to have the appetite to listen to me.
Thank you so much, Jeff. This has been a fantastic discussion. I really appreciate your openness and willingness to really share. I'm sure everyone, if we were in person, would be applauding right now, because I really appreciate it, because this stuff is things that we can't provide, and we know it. But this is how we want to be able to deliver some real world, practical expertise from people who are doing well in this space. So appreciate it.
Calvin, I'll just leave one last thing, which is that in the world of consulting, every CEO on here that talks about this, they'll understand that we're so used to being conditioned to say, what is the value of our consultants, right? If I want to make, $70 an hour and I can be sold at $90 an hour, there's some value, some profit margin so a company can build off of. Okay, got it. What we also need to think about intellectually, not financially, is what's the value of every person we hire. So, if we hire a contract specialist that helps negotiate stuff, if we have a person that's doing sales and business development, don't look at it in dollars and cents and be cheap about, like, is he worth $150,000 salary? Is he worth a $90,000 salary? Look at it. Is this person, what value will this person bring to my company? And does he pay for himself in a short period of time, or does he exponentially accelerate where my company needs to go in the future? Because there's an intangible here. So if we look at all aspects, it's being on a football team. If you look at the micro and not afraid to look at the micro and make sure that everyone is, as they say, the right seats on the right bus, and that they're on the right bus, that's where we go.
Fantastic. Hey, appreciate it.
Yeah.
Gabby, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thanks
All right.
for coordinating this. Appreciate it.
Of course, I'm glad to do so. It's awesome to listen to these conversations. I have to say thank you to both of you for being wonderful speakers, and thank you to all of our attendees for coming. We really enjoy doing this, and the more interest we have, obviously, the longer we'll keep going. I do believe we will be having a follow-up session with Jeff. As long as you all are registered in our vendor database, you will be getting information on that, so we'd love to have you attend. Just keep your eyes and ears open, and feel free to email us if you have any comments, questions, suggestions, additional things to hear from Jeff. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Everyone have a wonderful rest of your day, and thank you to both of you once again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Great job, Oz Blue Team.
Bye, everyone.